Vanuatu. Have you heard of it? Vanuatu is made up of 83 islands and is one of the most linguistically diverse countries in the world. Despite its small size and population, it has over 130 distinct languages spoken across its islands. So when our team decided to travel to this remote part of the world to capture the story of John G. Paton, we couldn't have imagined the challenges, history, and beauty that we would encounter. Our team consisted of 4 of us: Chad and Brooks, our on-camera hosts, Colin, our cinematographer, and me, Steven, the director of the series. And we also need to introduce to you our honorary team member and legendary pilot, Duncan. This guy became legendary in our books for many reasons, but especially for the very first challenge we would encounter. We left Port Vila in rainy conditions and flew to the island of Tanna, as the weather picked up to crosswinds of up to 60 knots. As we approached the landing strip, we noticed the angle of our plane. We knew this landing wouldn't be easy. The first attempt failed, and Duncan circled us around for a second attempt.
Nicely done. Nice. That's the craziest landing I've ever been part of. That was wild. Wow. That was so... Dang, that was so That's nuts.
That was
Totally
nuts. So Brooks, you've been in a lot of these small planes. What was that like?
That was a top 3er. That's still, I mean, I was praying. God gave us a window. Yeah.
Upon arriving at our home base for the week, we barely had time to celebrate our survival before diving into the week's plans and starting line rehearsals.
And then
Comment in Romans where he says, I no longer were hearing.
I'll set the stage. Volcano behind us. A drone shot high above the ocean, gliding slowly towards Tanna. I make it my ambition to preach the gospel where Christ is not yet been named. So we're going to do all this by port resolution by the volcano. All right, now we're at the volcano, and you can see it in the frame.
So we are here on the island of Tanna, Vanuatu. We have been driving for just over 2 hours. We just went around the volcano and we are approximately, I think, 5 kilometers away from the graveside of John Paton's wife and son. And our vehicle, the road's been washed out most of the way, but you can see right here, it's just impassable. So we have to walk the rest of the way. They're saying it's about an hour down this road, and yeah. 2 minutes later, we have decided to fill the hole, which sounds like a great idea in the first place. You can see it's a solid, what, 4-foot drop down there, so we're gonna fill it. There's a huge tree chunk that the guys are picking up right now. You can see it. Look at that. Brooks probably shouldn't have worn white today.
Yeah, just remind him because he's
Yeah, don't get your shirt dirty, Brooks. We filled the hole and proceeded to drive across it, actually quite smoothly. But then we got 2 minutes down the road, and it's just bad. It's so washed out, and it gets like 4, 5, 6 foot drops over here. So we're walking. We have about an hour walk till we get to the graveside. So we continued our search for the gravesite of John Paton's wife and child, led by our local guide who had claimed he had visited this site as a child. After a couple of unsuccessful locations, he climbed down into the bush once more. And there it was.
He's literally in the quote talking about us right now. Like he said, beloved ones, whenever Tana turns to the Lord and is won for Christ, men and after days will find the memory of this spot still green, where with ceaseless prayers and tears I claim this land for God, in which I had buried my dead with faith and hope.
Wow.
That's the quote that I was thinking.
After taking it all in, we headed further down the road to a local village. This was the area in which John Paton first landed when he came to the island of Tanna in 1858. After getting permission from the village elder, we filmed around the area for a bit and then made the journey back to home base, ending our first full day on Tanna.
We are headed to Anicham. We are going to shoot the place where John Paton and his wife Mary first landed in the New Hebrides. So looking forward to that. Hopefully we're going to find a Presbyterian church there. We'll see what happens.
Duncan showcased his landing skills, bringing the plane to a stall as we approached the landing strip island.
Well, we made it to Anicham. Courtesy of Duncan, pilot extraordinaire. That was a landing. This is high wind.
That was fine.
Our team then took a boat across the channel to the main island of Anicham, arriving to the sweet sound of singing voices.
On this side of me is the very first church on the island of Anicham. John Getty was the first missionary to these islands, and the fact here that is erected to him, it says, "To God be the glory. This monument was erected to commemorate the reconciliation between the Anicham people and the friends, relatives, and families of the first Samoan teachers who rendered their lives faithfully and bravely for God's sake. Arriving here in 1841 at Anicham, their faith in God has and continued to become the foundation of our faith as we meditate and imitate their lives, how they lived and how they died." And what's remarkable is, so that this church is huge. You can see how big it was. Back in the day, they say there were up to 20,000 people on this island, and there's an active Presbyterian church meeting right now. We just got here Sunday morning, and they're meeting right beside this building. It's quite remarkable. All right, so here's another building that was clearly original to when the first missionaries came here. But what's really interesting, so John Getty was the first missionary to these islands, and John Paton came shortly after. And we're here telling the story of John Paton. And they actually became good friends. And then John Paton went to the island of Tanna to actually build a house while his wife and child stayed here on this island.
After filming for a while at this location, we crossed the channel and wrapped up another successful day.
We are in the plane, en route to Aniwa. It should be about a 10-minute flight. Our pilot Duncan, and here we go.
We made it. It's a little tiny island.
Yep, 3 square miles, the entire thing. 3 square miles.
There's 5 villages I found, 460 people.
We're this way then.
Yeah.
Let's go find them.
All right, we landed on the island of Aniwa roughly, I don't know, 45 minutes ago.
45 minutes ago.
We've passed some villagers along the way, some farmers. It's about a 1.5-mile hike. Apparently there's one vehicle on the island, and I wasn't able to coordinate that using the internet because there is no internet here. We're going there to talk to the chief, or Brooks is going to talk to the chief in his native tongue, and Lord willing, we'll get permission to film. And it's pretty amazing and remarkable to think that Paton spent 15 years on this island.
Along our way, we encountered a friendly local woman who graciously took the role of our guide. She led us through the village, down a jungle path, to an incredible discovery.
So we came from that path over there into this settlement area. This is actually the location that John Paton lived, this area, for 15 years.
This is the original well that John G. Paton dug while here on Aniwa Island.
He dug this well in the center of island, Paton did,
Here.
to give fresh water to the natives. They had no idea, the people who lived here, they had no idea that you could actually dig fresh water well in the middle of the island. They actually were concerned he would fall into the ocean doing this. So, yeah, pretty amazing.
Our guides then led us to the remains of Paton's medical clinic and home, which has since been reclaimed by the jungle. Also on the property is a newer church that still hosts an active Presbyterian congregation today.
In memory of Helena Elizabeth Whitecross, born 1873, died 5 days. And Walter, beloved children of John Gibson and Margaret Whitecross Paton, Frank, but whose graves are beside this church.
Beside this church, we found the grave markers of some of Paton's children, a powerful reminder of the cost he paid to bring the gospel to this island. Another interesting discovery was a marker commemorating the first Lord's Supper that took place here in 1869. This discovery was only possible because we had Brooks, who had been a missionary in Papua New Guinea and learned the language there. These islands speak a variation of the same language, so while the locals said he sounded like a quirky cousin, they could still understand him. It always made them laugh when he first started speaking to them. It was a privilege to be able to visit this location. The last time people came to visit this site was in 2012, when John G. Paton's grandchildren returned to this location to dig a new well, replacing the old one their grandfather had first dug when he arrived on the island.
Just an incredible thought to think that this language that they're speaking right now, this is what John Paton spoke back in the day. He worked so hard to be fluent in this language.
We saw firsthand the lasting impact he left on these islands, evident in the thriving Presbyterian churches we encountered during our visit.
All right, we have finished the bulk of our lines here on Aniwa. By God's grace, we got everything, and we saw way more that was actually related to Paton than we had ever thought was even here. The internet doesn't say that there's really anything here related to Aniwa, let alone like a vibrant church, and we saw that. So very cool, and yeah, we're walking back to the airstrip, hoping to get one more line kind of where they departed after 15 years, and then we'll hop on the plane and go back to Tana.
A Weber one of these. Look at the size of that thing.
What is that thing? Poisonous? No. No, he's friendly.
Paton was courageous, fully embodying the spirit of missions where dying is gain. Like Paul in Romans 15:20, he made it his ambition to preach the gospel where Christ was not known. Trusting in God's sovereignty, he faced one threat after another, risking everything for the glory of Christ.
We are on our way to the airport. We have finished
5 days here in Tana, and we are heading to Port Villa now. And we're done. We're done shooting everything Paton related, and it's time to edit. But yeah, thank God for all the provisions along the way and the many locations that we were able to see that we didn't know existed. And here we go.